Alright, welcome back. It's Autodesk 3ds Max 2018 YouTube Classroom. This is video number 18, which is quarter 1, week 4, day 5. That's right, day 5. Unlike most of our videos, this one should be watched on Friday because you're done. You've modeled your object, you've colored it, you're good to go. This thing is done. So now what we need to do is take some pictures of it. And in order to facilitate the picture taking, I'm going to actually, I hit left, I'm going to make sure that I learn about layers. We need to talk about layers, and layers are right here. Layers are great because they allow you to choose things and put them into separate folders that you can then hide or show or render sometimes or not render at all. Oftentimes, we will have all of the reference planes that we use on their own layer, okay? So if they're on their own layer, they can easily be hidden or frozen or all that sort of stuff. So first things first, I'm going to right click and unfreeze all. When I do that, that will allow me to select all of these extra things. So I can grab all of these 3 planes. And you can see as I select them, they show up as selected in this layer manager over here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this button here, which is create new layer. And then what this will do is it will allow me to rename it. All right, so this layer 01 I'm going to call reference. Okay, and now if you wanted to rename that layer later, you should be able to right click and then adjust it through there. For now, we don't need to do that because we already set it. So now notice that just like we had in the setup, you can see what's inside or connected as a child of that. So under reference, we have all these reference planes, which is great. So the thing is, if we hit F9, you can see when it renders, there's my object, but there's also the layers in the back, the reference layer in the back. And if we don't want that to render, there's a couple ways we can do it. First things first, if I don't want these to be clickable, like currently if I click or if I marquee select, I can grab the layer, and I don't want to do that, so I want to freeze them. So I can actually freeze them in here, and I can freeze each one individually, or I can just freeze the whole reference stack. So once it's frozen, I can't freeze it. Now since the Halo rifle is in a different spot, oh, did you see something? Did you notice that? That cylinder, I never attached it. I should do that real quick. That's probably going to mess with it, but I'm going to grab this, and so I'm going to grab the rifle itself, go into here and attach. That happens. It's probably under edit geometry, I think. Attach that. Do not modify material IDs or material. Okay, now maybe that was the wrong choice. Let's try that again. I'm going to attach that and match material IDs to material. Let's see if that works. There, that works. That was the better choice. I actually don't use that very often, so I probably should be better at that. Anyway, so now Halo Rifle is all one object, or at least it's all connected and attached, which is what I wanted. And it's got that little raised portion. So it should be pretty good. Anyway, back to where we were. So we've got our reference layers, and we can actually freeze them all or unfreeze them all. And this here is render or not. So if I don't want the entire reference layer to render, I can just set it like this. Obviously, if I hit Shift F, you can see what will render and what won't. I turn this teapot off, and now the reference layer should not render. And it does. That's because these individual layers are not being controlled by it. Let's see. F9. Now each individual, with the old version, you used to be able to just select it from the top, but apparently you can't do that anymore. Anyway, so we can deselect these 3 so that when you see them, you can see them in your viewport, but they won't render themselves. Right? If I wanted them to render, you put the teapot on, and then they will render. But obviously, I don't want those on. All right, cool. So that's set. So I don't want those to render. I just want to render a side view of my rifle. And when I render things in 3D Studio, I want to make sure I'm taking up the most space as possible. I want to hit F10. F10 is my render setup. I'm going to keep the scanline renderer for now and keep the 1920 by 1080 and hit render. And then make sure it looks the way I want it to. Okay, which is good. I'm going to save this, and I'm going to call this, I need to get to the correct folder. So free rendering. All of these are junk. Delete, 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 delete. Okay, cool. So this is, I'm going to call this, and it doesn't really matter because you're not actually going to give these to me, but I'm going to call this left view. All right, and save it as a PNG. So we get that sweet, sweet alpha channel that you can see through. Now from the front view, I'm going to hit F so I can see it from the front view. Once again, I'm going to zoom in so it takes up almost the entire image. And hit F9 because it's already set up. I'm going to hit save on that one. I'm going to call it front. Front view. And save it as a PNG just like last time. Okay. And now I want a perspective view. So I'm going to hit P. And I'm going to get a nice wide perspective view that takes up all of the space that I have. Maybe even top, like sort of from the top. Although I probably want to take one from the back because the back part I think is probably the coolest. I'm going to get the top diagonal there. Render this. Save it. I'm going to call it persp. P-R-S-P capital T top. So that way I know it's the perspective from the top side, and we'll get that a PNG. Yes. Okay, and then I'll do the other side, at the back. I want to get that blue screen because that blue screen, we spent time on that. We want that to look good. We want one that show off. Still, that's pretty good. F9. Save that. Perspective top. I think I'm going to overwrite that perspective top one. Save. I'm going to overwrite it. Yes, I didn't have to add a PNG. Now this time I'm going to do the bottom like that. Make sure it fits. F9 and save. So pers bottom bots PNG. Save. Good. Okay, so now we've got all the pieces we need for this file. It's not a terrible idea if you have a nice left view with the concept art, kind of like I have it. It's not terrible to render out an image with that in it so that people can see what you've done. So in this case, how do I get it to render that again? Well, I come over here and I know I'm in the left view, so I can turn the teapot on in the left view, and then I hit F9 and it should render through. There you go. So now we can even make it smaller, or make it so that we can see a little more of this, and then render it so that people can see both sections. Right? Let's see there. Oh, it moved. There we go. F9. Cool. Cool, cool. Save that, and we'll call this left view plus concept CA. All right, cool. So this is done, and we've got all the pieces that we're going to need. So now I'm going to minimize this, and I'm going to pull up Photoshop. Now I had already gotten Photoshop ready. So what I want to do is I'm going to go to File, New. Now for Photoshop, what I want to do is I want to set it to US paper. Okay, I want it 11 inches wide by 8.5 inches tall. So 8.5. So it's 8.5 by 11. There you go. The resolution does not need to be 300. You can knock that down to what is it, 75, I think is common, and then save that. So for now, this is like generic paper size, which is important because the way we present this in the class is on paper because I print them out in color. So now we've got this empty spot that is considered our background. All right, cool. So I'm going to make sure that I have a new layer, and I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this. I'm going to convert this to a smart object, and then I'm just going to delete this layer because I don't need it. And now I've got this checker map means it's see-through. So let me go to my folder, and I'm going to find the folder I was working in, which was 18. I'm going to get pieces. So what I want to do is I want to find a way to show off all the work that we've done, and especially the best pieces of work, like this one. So I just drag it in, and then I hit enter. And what it does is it should create a new layer for each one of these objects that I drag in. So the next one I'm going to drag in will be the left view. All right, and you'll see over here that it creates a new layer. I'm just going to hit enter again. And I'll grab one more of the front view, drag it in, and then hit enter. So I'm just throwing a bunch of pieces on the table, basically. And then, sure, let's take that bottom one too and drop that in. Okay, so what I've done is I've made a bunch of different shots. Remember when we had our concept art and we talked about the two different types of art? This is much more like the first one. We're going to try and show off our model in different views. So we're going to grab this little arrow up here, click on a layer, and hold Control and press T. What that does is it allows us to transform stuff. Now, if you just click on a corner and drag, you can distort things pretty badly. So it's best to hold Shift, because if you hold Shift, you're not going to distort your image. So I'm going to get this smaller and then hit enter. The one that I really want to mess with is, I think, probably the perspective top, because that is my favorite. I'm going to take it, which is now in its own layer. I'm going to drag it up to the top and select it. I'm going to hide these other ones for now by clicking this little eyeball. So this is kind of my primary image, and every one of your files that you turn in should have at least one primary image. I'm going to hold Control and press T, and I'm going to move it down. This is going to be the highlight of the entire thing. All right, so this is going to be the biggest part of the image. I'm going to hit enter once I have it placed well. The least important one we'll put in last, which I think is perspective bottom. I'm going to drag that to the bottom just so I have an idea. Now I'm going to add the front view and the left view. So the left view can probably fit down here. So I'm going to grab that first, hit Control T, hold Shift, and then scale it down until it fits somewhere that I like it. I think that will be good. Right there. Hit enter. The top view, or the front view, Control T again, is going to be shrunk down significantly. And then drag it up here. Cool. The next thing I want to do is make sure that I have some sort of image of my concept art that I used. All right? And I may end up changing, like this might need to go up here. Like I can move these things around. And let's say this doesn't fit really well because I've got a lot of wasted space here. I can take this. I can hold Control and press T. Now I can right click and I can rotate it. I'm going to rotate it. I'm going to flip it, actually. Let's flip it horizontal so it's the other way. And because we built this symmetrical, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to move it down there. Now, you may be wondering why I'm leaving so much space up here. And the reason is we're going to put our name up there when we get to it. Next thing I'm going to do is find my concept art, which is up quite a bit. I'm going to go here, concept art setup. MA5C rifle, drag that in, hold Alt, shrink it down, and then move it down here. Now, I don't think I really need all of this art for this, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to manipulate this a little bit. So I'm going to hit enter. I'm going to hide all this other. I'm going to make sure I have this MA5C rifle selected. And now I'm going to click over here with this eraser tool. All right. Since this is not a smart object, which you can tell right there, you got to right click and you can rasterize it, raster, and then now you can actually adjust it. Okay, so I want to keep this part, but I think I'm going to delete this, and all I'm doing is left click and erasing it. And I'm going to erase this part, and I'm going to erase this, and I think that's it. I think I'll leave the rest. Cool. So now I'm going to duplicate this layer, okay, because I want to keep this whole assault information. So I am going to duplicate layer. I'm just going to call it rifle text, enter, and now I've got two that are the same. So if I hide one, I can select one. So the one with the text I'm going to select and show. Now I'm going to delete this other business, enter. Okay, good. Now I'm going to hit the MA5C, but now I'm going to Control T, and I'm just going to press the arrow key down, and you can see where it is. So I'm going to cancel. I'm just going to drag it down. Cool. So that's set up there. So it's in the middle. Enter. Cool. So that's set up perfectly. Now I've got this extra stuff that I don't want. I'm going to delete that. Okay, cool. So now I have the art there. I've got the rifle and this other perspective. Control T. Nope, I had the wrong thing. Control T. All right, this other perspective I don't really need. And you know what? I don't think I even want it anymore. There's no good place for it. I'm just going to delete it. So I'm going to select this perspective bot. Right, I can just hide it if I wanted to, and that would be fine. Yeah, let's just hide it. That's smarter, because in case we change our mind one day, we'll just hide it and leave it in the file. The final thing we're going to do is create text. Now, here's where you can do some fun stuff. You've got the little checker map up here. You can click and drag out up here along the top. And what I want to do here is I want to make sure I put the number in. So what period are you in? So if you're in 5th period, press 5. And then a space. You don't have to do an underscore because we're showing this off. Your last name. Oops. It's hard to see. I'm going to hit Control A and then change the text so it's something I can read. And you can use whatever color you want, whatever font you want, etc., etc. Last name, and then Free1. Cool. So now we know who did it. Now, with that said, I'm going to use this text key again. I'm going to click on this, highlight it, and I'm going to make it bigger. So it takes up a lot of space. Then I'm going to move it with that arrow tool, just like you saw it. I like to keep it at least 2 squares off the top. You know, keep it a decent amount off the top. I know the squares change based on how close you're zoomed in. So now it's like a whole bunch of squares, but just give it some decent space from the top. Okay, so that's all finished. And now all we need to do is go File, Save for Web. By saving for web, it allows us to adjust all the dimensions and all the important pieces of this. The image size currently is 825 by 638, which is kind of a weird number. And our resolution of a lot of the images in here are significantly higher than that. So we can actually adjust it and put it up to, let's say 1500 by 1160. That should be fine. You should be able to hit. Now, currently I had it set to a GIF. You don't want that. So let's set it to PNG 8. And then we can do perceptual. And you can always zoom around and look and make sure it looks good. And then hit save. And it's going to ask where we want to save it. So I'm going to put it in the folder with all my other stuff, which is here, here, there, all the way down to Free1 rendering. So there we go. Now we're going to call this your number, so 5 underscore this time because it's a file name. Last name underscore Free1, and it's a PNG. So we're going to save it in with everything else. Hit save. All right, cool. Now we've done it. That's our main focus for the day. You're going to take that file and turn it in, and your free one is complete. So thanks a lot for watching. If you have any questions, hit me up in the comments or see me in class, and I will see you next week for week 5. See you next time.